for people. If anyone's new, I know you know what intermittent fasting intermittent fasting is, but let's still go over it just briefly, just to explain it simply to everyone. All it means is that when you're intermittent fasting, is that you're compressing your eating window, right? So you're cycling between eating and not eating. Typically when you go to sleep at night, right? If you don't wake up and eat something, you're in a fasted state. You wake up, the first meal of the day. That's why they call it breakfast. You're breaking your fast in a way, And here are all the popular types of intermittent fasting. Hey, Gene is saying, hey, Gene, how you doing? I appreciate you showing up. I'm curious to know how you're doing this week, but we'll talk about it. We'll be here for a while. And obviously, there's all these basic types of intermittent fasting strategies that I talk about all the time. One is just a 12 to 14 hour fast, which I think is totally legitimate. Don't think it's nothing. Fasting for 12 to 14 hours really does do things. It's a great way to reduce calories, great way to improve your health. So it's a great way to start intermittent fasting, just doing a 12 to 14 hour fast. Also, the most popular, obviously, is the 16-8, right? You fast for 16 hours, taking all your calories within an 8-hour eating window. The other popular strategy is an 18-6, which is probably my favorite. I like 18-6 a lot. That's what I seem to gravitate towards the most, is an 18-6, where I fast for 18 hours, taking all your calories within a 6-hour eating window. And then a little bit more aggressive is the 24, meaning that you fast for 20 hours, then taking all your calories within a 4-hour eating window. If you noticed, in my opinion, the more aggressive the fasting strategy is, the more you're reducing calories, right? It's counterintuitive. It's not what most people think. Most people think that if they fast for 18 hours, they're going to be like ravenously hungry. We're going to talk about this here. And then you're going to eat more food. Not necessarily the case. I even find some people don't eat enough, which we're going to talk about. Manage, hey, from UK, thanks for showing up. I appreciate it. From London, so I was late where you guys are already, right? I appreciate you. Appreciate you giving me your late Sunday watching this live stream, which is great. Then there's the 24-hour fast, more aggressive. Obviously, you can't do that every day. You have to eat, right? But you do it, once, twice a week, maybe once a quarter. Then we got the alternate day fasting, where you're fasting every other day. The classic way of doing that is really to fast for 36 hours, meaning that, let's say you had your last meal, say in the evening on a Sunday, you wouldn't eat till Tuesday afternoon when you break your fast. That'd be like a 36-hour fast. That's one popular way of doing it. And then I always like to throw in 2 meals a day. I think 2 meals a day is probably the best long-term fasting strategy, and you can do it so many different ways. You can do it when you're doing 16-8, right? You can do it when you're doing 18-6. You can even, I think there's even benefit if you're doing, say, a 12-hour fast. You can have breakfast and have dinner, skip lunch, and be in like a 12-hour fasted period. So there's so many different ways to do intermittent fasting. But to me, I think it works better long-term than calorie restriction. Also, it's a great way to reduce calories without having to count calories, right? Driving yourself nuts looking things up. Plus, I think there are so many hormonal benefits to just not eating and just letting all the food be processed, keeping insulin levels low. Based on all the books that I've been reading over the years, like Dr. Jason Fung, The Obesity Code. I'll bring up all the books and the doctors I follow, like I always do in these live streams, which is great. Okay, so let's jump into it. It's interesting. It seems let me see if I'm getting any other calls. Seems like Rob and Harriet. Hey Harriet, how you doing? Harriet also came through on the phone. So I wonder if maybe people from Facebook are going through on the phone, whereas people right on YouTube is going straight through. But let's see. Okay, so let's talk about how can you do these fasting strategies. I mean, if you never fasted before, I think everyone in the room, I know you guys and gals are fasters, so you can probably relate to this. But if you've never fasted before, some people are so afraid to try it because they think they're going to be like ravenously hungry. They've been eating 4, 5, 6 meals a day, but you really can't do it. So I would say one strategy I like is to consistently keep on mixing up the fasting strategies like we talked about. Like, it seems like if your body will pretty much adapt to get used to exactly what you're doing. So if you're doing, say, a 16-8, right? Let's say you had your last meal 8 o'clock in the evening, say on a Sunday night, and you're ready to break your fast the next day, 12 in the afternoon. So you've been fasting, say, for 16 hours. But you get ravenously hungry around 10 o'clock. Your body's getting used to it and is just setting those hunger signals. So I love the strategy of constantly changing your intermittent fasting strategy. Like one day do a 16-8. The next day do an 18-6. Maybe the third day just do a 12-hour fast. It keeps the body guessing, keeps the metabolism jumping around. Plus, it's also an excellent way to cycle your calories, meaning that eating more calories some days and less calories other days, which I think is great. Oh, thanks, Gene. Gene, oh, he's such a great guy. He always gives me every Sunday. I can always count on a super chat from Gene. I really appreciate it. Let's see how he's doing. I'm still on a diet break for another week. I don't know what happened. I mean, you put on 10 pounds in 3 days after I stopped my diet. I'm too so that I want Gene. Don't worry about it. I think it's a good thing. What probably happened? I mean, you were really doing. Gene has been doing a pretty aggressive calorie restriction fasting type protocol. He was like, he wants to lose a lot of weight. You see, he's a bigger guy. He's done incredibly well. He was eating only like 500 calories a day for a long time, doing OMAD, doing a number of different like aggressive fasting strategies. And I really wanted him to take a diet break. I think it is a good thing. But what happened to you, Gene, is that you just filled up your muscles and your liver with glycogen. And you probably retained a lot of water, which I think is totally okay. I bet if you visually look at yourself in the mirror, and even though maybe you gained those 10 pounds back, it may not look like body fat to you. You may even look more muscular. See what happens, like I talk about this all the time. When you eat a meal, right, the pancreas produces insulin to store away those excess calories. Carbohydrates get stored in the muscle and the liver. So a guy like Gene, who's 275, he can easily store, who knows, he may be able to store 3,000, 3,500 calories of carbohydrates in the muscles and the liver. And then there's also like a 3 to 4 ratio of water retention for every gram of carbohydrates he's storing. So he can easily gain 5 pounds like this in a day just from, taking a cheat day for a week or two. Plus, he was probably in a state of super compensation. This is what I mean. Many years ago, you don't really hear about it too much now. Like, for example, you ever hear carbohydrate loading? Like when athletes, like marathoners, right, they would like restrict carbohydrates for a couple of days and then carb up to store more carbohydrates in the muscles. You can actually trick your body to overcompensate and store even more carbohydrates in your muscle than you typically would. So the fact that Gene was on such a calorie restricted diet and he was doing eating pretty good, his body probably over responded to his cheat week by even storing a lot more carbohydrates than he typically would be able to. So in the past, maybe he could only store away 3,000. Who knows, Gene? You may be able to store away 5,000-6,000 calories of carbohydrates in your muscle and your liver, and then you gain 3 or 4 times that by water. You could have 7 pounds just from that. It will come off. I think it's a good thing that you did it. First of all, it boosts up your metabolism. It makes sure you're not malnourished. It makes sure you're getting your vitamins, and minerals, and nutrients. We're going to talk about this in some of the later slides. I think that's a big reason why I think people are hungry when they're fasting. They're malnourished. If you're missing any particular vitamin, mineral, nutrient, you're gonna be hungry. You know who talks about that a lot is Shawn Stevenson in his book. I forget the name of the book now. I read it. It just came out maybe 6 months ago. It was a big hit. I forget the name of it. I even have it upstairs. It'll come to me. He talks about when you're malnourished, when you're missing any particular nutrient. It could be vitamin B, it could be vitamin D, whatever it might be. You're going to be hungry, and you're going to keep on eating to try to fill that deficiency. So I think it was a good thing you took the break. Let's see what he says here. Okay. Makes sense, my pants size. See, I agree, Gene. I think you just literally, who knows, you may even have put on a pound or two of muscle in addition, because you were so restricted. And I know you're working out. We talked about it. I know you're doing your workouts. And I think your body overcompensated by storing much more carbs than it typically would. I think when you go right back to your typical, lower calorie intermittent fasting, or whatever you're gonna do, it's gonna come off, and it's more of a good long-term plan for sure. I think it was a good move. So hang in there for another week. I think it was a smart move. Also, too, I never been discussed it with you. I hope you're also taking a multivitamin too. I would definitely do that. They were a little expensive, but I like those Every Man New Chapter, because they were whole food vitamins, just like taking dehydrated foods. That would probably be a cool thing for you to take as well too, just to make sure. I recommend it to everyone too, taking a good multi every single day. And I like the whole food multis. New Chapter is a great company, but there are other ones out there. And what I mean by whole food is that every single vitamin and mineral that's listed is naturally occurring from the dehydrated food within the vitamin. So it's like, I don't think synthetic vitamins are all that bad, but if you talk to your doctor or whatever, they're always going to say a whole food is always better, because it's totally safe. Same thing with those green powders, with those dehydrated greens and reds. All they are fruits and vegetables. They try to trick you, sometimes, and they throw a synthetic vitamin in it. But you can look in the label and see, for example, like when people look at total cereal and they look at like a cornflake and they say, oh my God, a cornflake, 100% vitamin A, 100% vitamin C. All total is a synthetic multivitamin sprinkled on top of the cereal. Like those vitamins, minerals, and nutrients are not in the grain. There's something in the grain, a little bit, but not what's listed. So when you're looking at vitamins, when you're looking at even powders, try to figure out if it's a whole food source. They'll generally say naturally occurring, things like that. And then you know it's a whole natural food. A New Chapter even ferments their vitamins. So even though they are low potency, a fermented vitamin is kind of like a vitamin that's almost pre-digested. So you can absorb it better. You don't need those high levels. Even like Alive. Alive's a good multivitamin too. And it's a combination of whole natural food. My brother turned me on to that one, Rob. It's a combination of synthetic and whole foods. I think that's a good one too. So tip number one for preventing hunger when you're fasting is mix it up. I think it's a great strategy. Do a 16-8 one day. The next day you can take a diet break. Take the day off. The third day do an 18-hour fast. The fourth day do a 20-hour fast. Fifth day maybe just fast 12, 14 hours. It keeps the hunger at bay. It makes sure you're cycling your calories. It also makes sure you're taking in enough vitamin, minerals, and nutrients. The only downside of this is that it can mess slightly with your circadian rhythm. And what I mean by circadian rhythm is your normal internal clock. There are people who specialize, like doctors who have been studying fasting, like Dr. Panda. I read his book, The Circadian Code, really, great book. He would prefer you to stick to the same circadian rhythm, meaning like go to sleep at night the same time, right? Wake up in the morning the same time every day. Eat the same time every day so your body hormonally can adjust to it. But I think, though, in my opinion, I think you'll do really well mixing up the fasting strategy. I do both. Sometimes I'll do a time-restricted eating where I'm eating the same time every single day, doing like an 18-6 for a month, where I break my fast every day, 2 o'clock. But then I'll use some of the other strategies to prevent hunger, which we'll talk about. But I think a combination is good. I like mixing it up. I do. Okay, so let's go to strategy number 2. And any other questions, let me know. Which is great. So this is interesting. I've done this a couple of different ways with people over the years. One way is just to jump into fasting, like don't change your diet. First of all, like we're going to talk about too, you always do better with intermittent fasting or any type of diet strategies if you clean up the diet, right? If you eat better, you eat whole foods, you get rid of the processed foods, get rid of the junk. When it comes to fasting, though, since fasting got popular with like things like just not eating for 24 hours or doing the OMAD diet, only eating one meal a day, without people changing their diet, people get good results. So it kind of has a stigma to it. But I do prefer, obviously, before you start these fasting strategies, protocols, is if you can clean up the diet a little bit. If you can switch over to more of a low-carb diet before you start fasting, you definitely won't be as hungry. There's no question about it. Because carbohydrates are the macronutrients. That there's 3 macronutrients: protein, fats, and carbs. Some people consider alcohol to be the 4th one because alcohol is kind of a separate category. 7 calories per gram of alcohol. And alcohol gets prioritized in the body and gets burnt off first. So it's the opportunity cost of alcohol, even maybe more than the calories, meaning that if you're drinking alcohol, especially if you're eating, right, the body thinks alcohol is kind of like a poison. First, it's going to process and burn that alcohol. The liver wants it to burn, get rid of that alcohol. So where those excess calories go, they get stored away as body fat, or they fill up the muscles with glycogen, right? So, keep the alcohol to a minimum if you can. But if you can switch over to more of a low carb diet, I think you'll be less hungry when you start these fasting strategies, because carbs is the macronutrient that spikes insulin, spikes blood sugar the most. And the body doesn't like more than about 5 grams of sugar running through the bloodstream at any one time. So, for example, if you eat like a high carb meal, pancreas reduces insulin, and then your blood sugar drops, you get hungry again. You want that sustained energy. Plus, I think a low carb diet is the healthiest diet for most people long term to be an optimal weight. And I have my general formula. I've talked about this before. If you're like, people say, well, how many carbs should I eat? If you're 150 pounds, I like to stay at around 100 grams of carbs per day, which is 400 calories. I think that's a nice sweet spot for most people around 150 pounds. Obviously, activity level will come into play. If you're over 150 pounds, maybe 150 grams. If you're a big guy, gal, If you're 250, you up it. Pretty much I like to say is whatever you want now, whatever your baseline is, if you're eating 300 grams of carbs a day, maybe for a couple of weeks, get yourself used to eating 200, 150 grams of carbs a day before you start these fasting strategies. You're going to have a much harder time. A much easier time, I mean. But if you're used to eating 350, 400 grams of carbs a day, say 12, 16, 1800 calories are coming from carbohydrates, which is really typical, and then you decide you're going to start skipping breakfast, you're going to be hungry. It's just that, it's going to happen. It'll take you a much harder, a much longer time to adjust to it. Okay, and then like I say, most of your carbs should come from vegetables and fruits, like we talked about in the past. But I also made a note here. This is kind of an interesting thing that kind of proved this point. It's like, this is like my bodybuilding analogy. You know, many years ago, plus I fooled around with a little bodybuilding myself, but I used to train just like amateur bodybuilders, like 25, 30 years ago, and even longer when I worked in just bigger commercial gyms, even before I opened my gym. And they would compete in like local contests, like a Mr. Westchester, like a smaller contest, or even smaller than that. There were these natural bodybuilding contests going on all the time. And the diet that was really popular back then, and still is now, is for like bodybuilders, physique enhancement athletes, is, you know, a relatively higher carb diet, low fat, but always with an adequate amount of protein. And we would go through it. This would be like a typical protocol we would follow to get ready for a contest to get our body fat incredibly low, right? So what you would do is you always keep your protein high. So say we are 2 or 3 months out before a contest and we want to get our body fat levels incredibly low. So what we would do is that, since carbohydrates were most of our calories, we would start reducing carbohydrates. We always ate relatively low fat. And we always ate an adequate amount of protein, say 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And as we started reducing carbs, you started getting hungry, right? But then maybe 3 weeks, 2 weeks right before a contest, you want to go into ketosis. Okay, that's when you start really burning that stubborn body fat. So then you would switch over to more of like a little bit of a higher fat, protein, and almost no carb diet. The amazing thing is that when everyone, and I've done it myself, when we were reducing carbohydrates, we were just always hungry. But when we switched over to more of a ketogenic type diet, you're hungry for a day, then we weren't hungry, which is really amazing. Like these low carb diets, you're really not hungry. That's me. Like I ate like that, more of a higher carb, always kept my protein up, relatively lower fat diet in my 20s and my 30s. I looked good and my body fat was low, but I was always hungry. I was a guy, always wanted to go out to eat, always wanted to, you know, eat clean, but always hungry. But then in my 40s, when I got older, when I switched over, and I'm in my 50s now, you know, when I switched over to more of a low carb, whole natural food diet, I'm really never hungry. I really am not. Eating low carb really controls appetite. There's no question about it. I feel like I messed myself up, though, I have to say, a little bit with that 3-day fast that I did. I know I did the live stream about a month ago on where I fasted for 3 days. Interesting how it affected me. I think it still was a good experience, but I started craving fruit after that, which kind of prompted me to do what I talked about 2 weeks ago, which I did that meat and fruit diet, which for me just did not work. I talked about it. I did a community post. It really messed me up, that meat and fruit diet too. And I even think the 3-day fast a little bit. It made me crave things that I haven't craved in a really long time. And I found just eating meat and fruit made me, the fruit for me is just a little bit too sweet. I need the vegetables. It just made me crave sugar. It just didn't go. So keeping carbs under control is definitely a big thing. Let's see who's here. Oh, Matthew's here. Okay, when is the best time to do OMAD? You know, it's hard to say, Matthew, because it's kind of like a general question. We're going to talk about this a little bit too. I personally, for my schedule, if I'm doing OMAD, because just socially, I want to eat with my wife, my kids, if people come over, I always like to skip breakfast and lunch and then just have a nice dinner. But the new research, when it comes to fasting in general, does say, and we're going to talk about a protein hack later in this presentation, that for maintaining muscle mass and for protein synthesis, it probably is better to take in protein earlier in the day. So if it does work in your schedule, you look like a young fit guy, if you can just eat one meal a day and do it like 10, 12 o'clock, it might be better. Hard to say, but in my opinion, there's so many great benefits to doing the OMAD. You're restricting calories, just taking a fasted state for 22, 23 hours. I think you can do it whatever really fits in your schedule. So many of these things, you can drive yourself crazy and say, like, what is the best possible way of doing it? It all is how far you want to take it. The main thing to me is just to find a strategy that fits into your lifestyle that you can do long term for the rest of your life to maintain an optimal weight and to maintain good health and good numbers when you get your blood work done and all that type of stuff. Same thing with this bodybuilding analogy I was talking about. When I was eating more of that higher carb type diet, hungry all the time, but still kept low body fat levels, my blood work is better now in my 40s and 50s, now that I've switched over to more of a lower carb, higher fat, adequate amount of protein diet, because carbohydrates is what gets converted into triglycerides, the bad cholesterol in your liver. If you're pounding carbs all the day, even if they're clean carbs like white rice and just bread and things like that, but you're eating a ton of them like I was, it was raising my triglycerides. I never really had high cholesterol, but my numbers are so much better now. Like my triglycerides are like in the 40s. My HDL is almost double that. My cholesterol numbers are incredible, and they weren't as good when I was eating more high carb. Hey, how you doing? Does that include when you eat fruit? Yeah, no, yes. I mean, when it comes to I'm assuming you're talking about like 100, if say you're 150 pounds, 100 grams of carbs. Yes, I would do a combination of vegetables and fruit, mostly vegetables. I find the satiety, and we've talked about this before, I think, Coach, I find the satiety of vegetables much, much higher than fruit. I like to accent with fruit. Like you've seen my meals. Like I'll have like a sardine, smoked salmon, an avocado is a fruit. But like some fruits are different. Avocados are fruit. But it's really, I consider it more of a vegetable. Tomatoes are fruit, but still more of a vegetable fruit. An olive, right, is a fruit. But I think I would classify that a little bit more on the vegetable. I think a little bit of fruit goes a long way. You can take like just a handful, like 15 blueberries. It adds color to the meal. It tastes great. You don't need that much. Like I'll do a Greek yogurt. I'll literally put 4 blackberries in it, right? I'll put like 6 or 7 blueberries, and it adds so much flavor. It's giving you a little bit of sugar, a little bit of fructose, but some vitamins, some minerals, some fiber. So I would keep an eye on fruit. Maybe no more than 2 fruits a day, or a cup of fruit, or a cup of berries a day, and then load up on your vegetables. I find vegetables to be so satisfying. They fill you up. They're loaded with fiber, vitamins, nutrient dense. I love the vegetables. And then the proteins. You need the proteins. We're going to talk about that later too. You always have to prioritize protein. It's the most important macronutrient. It's more nutrient dense than anything you can eat. A piece of salmon, a piece of fish. If you're a vegetarian or vegan, it could be a little bit more challenging. I find that you probably have to supplement your diet with maybe like a hemp seed protein powder, or maybe a pea protein, unless you're in the school of thought that you want to stay on a relatively low carb diet. That's why you're doing a vegetarian diet, because you're concerned about longevity. There is some research, I mean, we're talking about this in the past, that if you're constantly spiking mTOR, which is the growth signaling, or IGF-1 insulin growth factor, that the longevity, it may not be a good thing if you're just constantly 5-6 meals a day pounding proteins. It puts you too much in the growth phase, and besides growing, some bad things can grow. But I think an adequate amount of protein, and I've talked about it in the past, is 0.9 grams per pound of lean body weight. So if you're 150 pounds, and I might be repeating this to some people who show up every week, but if you're 150 pounds, 20% body fat, that gives you 130 pounds of lean mass, you want 105, 110 grams of protein. I think you can even go higher. Let's see what Melissa's got. I have to choose my fuel fat. Choose my fuel fat card. Yes, no, definitely. Let's see how Melissa feels better. Okay, Melissa feels better with high fat, low carb. I do too. There's no question about it. I feel more steady, less spikes in sugar, insulin. I'm never hungry. I'm more consistent. My mood is better. I totally agree. And every now and then, though, I'll do maybe like what Gene does well. I'll take a week or 2 off. And it's interesting. Sometimes it's hard. Like Gene, you may have a little bit of a hard time that first week transitioning back. But since you were doing it for a long time, it may not be too bad. Same with me. I've been eating low carb now for over a decade. So even if I have a cheat week, or definitely a cheat meal, I can jump right back into it. But I agree with you, Melissa. I feel so much better when I'm eating more of a higher fat, low carb, adequate amount of protein diet. And when we're talking about fats, I'm not in the school of I'm not in the camp of that we're adding just adding fats to everything you eat. Like I don't take a steak and douse it with butter. I don't add mayonnaise to things. I'm not trying to eat a high-fat diet. I just get the high fats from the whole natural foods I'm eating. And I think that's the best approach. Like, for example, I'm eating avocados every day. I'll eat 1 or 2 avocados every single day, right? I'm eating salmon. I'm eating sardines. I'm eating just normal cuts of meat. I don't really like fatty cuts of meat, I have to say. I'm not a big bacon person. I'll have a little bit every now and then. I even like to keep sodium in check. But I'm very generous also with extra virgin olive oil. I think that's like one of the healthiest monounsaturated fats, just high in those polyphenols, all those great things. So if I do enter my food into like MyFitnessPal, which I love doing from time to time, I'll be at like 50-60% fat without like using mayonnaise, without trying to eat those like fat bombs, or without trying to eat these keto type things. I'm just eating whole natural foods. And that's just how the ratios come out. It comes out to where I'm eating maybe 25-30% protein, 50%, 60% fat. And then I'm at like that 10-15% carbohydrates, mostly from vegetables and a couple of fruits that accent my meals. I think that's the ideal diet for most people. You know, there are people, I've dealt with them because I've dealt with so many people over the years who do really well on a higher carb, lower fat diet, and they just like it, and that's great, you know. But then intermittent fasting can work in that as well. I mean, intermittent fasting works for everything, you know, which is great. All right, so let's go to strategy number 3. This is an interesting one. This is let's see what Gene's got. Okay, Gene's thinking of increasing his calories to 800 calories a day, so I can have 150 grams of protein a day. I think that's great, Gene. Truthfully, I didn't want to mess you up, and I know we just talked about it a couple of times. I think 500 was a little too aggressive. I mean, to do it every single day. I think 800 is much better because then you're going to get enough protein. I think that's great. And there's nothing wrong, too. I mean, you can mix it up, right? You can do 800 3 days a week. Then you can do a low-calorie day and maybe do 500 calories a day, every third day or something like that. But I would much rather you make sure you get that 130 grams of protein a day. And I'd much rather you do the 800 calories. I think that's great. You're still going to be in a pretty aggressive calorie deficit, for sure. So I like that a lot. I think that's a great idea. I just want to check the phone to see if anything's coming in. Comment phone wise. No, okay. Yeah, I think it's just Rob and Harriet on the phone. Okay, cool. Okay, so this is another one. This is another thing where it can work both ways. But if you find that, you know, let's say you tried intermittent fasting, you tried 16-8, and you were just like ravenously hungry, and you didn't clean up your diet before you started, and it becomes like torturous to you. I like the idea of first eliminating your carbs first and then doing things like that, eliminating your trigger foods. Trigger foods are such a negative for so many people. They just like want, and I'm similar too. There's certain foods that I will not keep in my house. I recently made the mistake and I had a bag of potato chips in my house. If there's a bag of potato chip in the house, I'm going to eat the whole bag of chips. I mean, I can't stop eating them. So there are certain foods, and you know what they are. I always tell people, sit down, 2 weeks before you decide you're going to start fooling around with these intermittent fasting schedules and strategies. Sit down, write down all your trigger foods, all the foods that once you start eating them, you just cannot stop eating them. And it's probably obvious. For me, it's potato chips. I'm not really more of a cookie guy. I like at Christmas time, though, I do like those butter cookies. So maybe there'll be a tin in the house around the holidays, maybe just one tin. For me, it's that. And certain foods, like I love like an eggplant parmesan or things like that. I just don't keep that stuff around the house. So I would really recommend you do that. Make a list, sit down, write down all your trigger foods. You also have to tell the people around you, your spouse, your kids, your friends, don't bring these foods over. My mother's great at that. She knows the things I like. She'll come up to my house and bring me these foods, these trigger type foods, which is really nice of her to do it. But I have to say, I really don't want them. You really don't want them in the house. So make a list of your trigger foods. You have to accept it. And there's no way around this. Don't keep them in the house. You can't say, oh, maybe moderation. There's such thing as moderation when it comes to a trigger food. A trigger food is a food. If you can find a food that's like more of a moderate type thing where, I can have a couple of cookies. I can have 2 Oreo cookies and I had enough. But if you're the type that if you have 2 Oreo cookies, you eat the whole sleeve, you can't have Oreo cookies in the house. Unfortunately, you have to take a strong line on that. There are certain foods, like I know with me, if there were potato chips in my house, I'm eating that whole bag of potato chips. So keep that in mind. Get the trigger foods out of the house a couple of weeks before the fasting. Get it, it's going to make it so much easier for you. There's no question about it. Just looking at a trigger food is going to make you hungry. So try to do that. I think that's a big plus for so many people, eliminating those trigger foods. Okay, let's go. Let's see. Manisha, hey, Manisha's here too. That's great. Hey, my trigger food was French croissant. Oh, I love croissants too. That's funny that you get fresh in London and the UK. I had to start buying them, but I allowed myself a treat once a month. If they have them in the house, I can. Yeah, and I know exactly how you feel. It's so funny because my kids, they were just home from school. And my daughter, my son too, they love these chocolate croissants. Right near my gym, I have this incredible French. It's funny, the chef barely speaks. I think that's what you would call a pastry chef, a chef too, right? He barely speaks English. He's he makes incredible, desserts, and one of his things he's known for are chocolate croissants. And when I buy them, I only buy two. I buy one for my daughter, one for my son, because I don't want to eat them. I love them too. A croissant, that buttery, it's incredible, and just so fresh. So once a month is fine. And I'm sure you have your one croissant once a month. That's a great way to do it. But it just, if you had them in the house every day, you'd be eating them every day. And there's a lot of calories, and the combination of fat and carbohydrates together is probably the worst. For sure, like a quick glycemic carbohydrate, like a croissant, with the butter and all the other fats in there. It's a formula for disaster if you do it every single day. That's for sure. Okay, and this is another strategy I really like. Strategy number 4. Let's say you've been doing your intermittent fasting, like I said. Let's say you're doing at 18:6, and you're doing time restricted eating. You're doing it every single day, and you find that you typically break your fast at 2 in the afternoon, but you find that 12 o'clock every day, 2 hours before your fast, you are just ravenously hungry. Maybe you did the low carb thing, maybe you eliminated your trigger foods, but for some reason you get around that 16-hour mark and your brain is just saying, I need to eat something. So I think there are a couple of things you can do. This is what I think you can do. You can actually, if you know what's going to happen, it gives you clues. You can do things that can distract you from being hungry. One thing I like to do or tell people is, so what, if you know you're going to be hungry 12 o'clock every day, call a friend. Plus, if you're working, that's like lunchtime. Call a friend, call a different friend every single day. It's great for your happiness, for your life anyway, to keep connected with your friends, family. Call a friend at 12 o'clock, have a 15-minute conversation every day. You're not going to be hungry. It's going to distract you. It's going to take your mind off it. It's going to make you looking forward to calling someone. And it's a reason to call someone too, right? Another thing you can do is just go for a walk every day. It's lunch break. In the middle of the day, take a 15-20 minute walk. It's going to curb your appetite. It's good for your health, good for your brain, good for everything. See, if you know you're going to be hungry, like your body will definitely always falls into these patterns. And if you know they're there, you can do things ahead of time to prevent them. So calling a friend, doing anything. Hey, you can do a crossword puzzle, right? Like 12 o'clock every day if you know you're going to be hungry. You can go play a video game for 10-15 minutes. Do whatever you got to do to distract yourself if you do want to do that extra, if you want to make it to that 18-hour mark. And I'm not saying you should be hungry every single day. If you're hungry every single day and it's going on for weeks and months, we got to figure something else out for you. But if you're having a hard time adjusting to, say, maybe you're doing 16-8 for a while and now you want to take it to the next level and go to 18-6, but you just can't get those 2 hours without being really hungry, try something like this. Call a friend, take a walk, do a crossword puzzle, play a video game, do something to distract you. Read a book. It's nice to read in the middle of the day too. Take a 15-20 minute break. Meditate for 10 minutes. Do something to take your mind off the fact that you're hungry. It really does work. It's worked for a lot of people. I find calling someone to be the best, it's a reason to call a friend, or a family member. It's a good thing to do anyway. It's good for all of us. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, let's go over this too. These are the questions I get all the time too. Another great thing, and I know we've discussed this in the past, is just taking in like no calorie type liquids when you're fasting. And there are things that definitely suppress your appetite. And there's a couple of I think the next slide I got a couple of protein hacks. Obviously you can drink your black coffee. There's almost no calories, like 1 calorie in a cup of black coffee. Plus the caffeine, I find it definitely suppresses my appetite. No doubt about it. Let's see what Rob's got. Rob, I often get hungry 15-16 hour mark. I often have a cup of coffee. Yeah, no, I think that's great, Rob. I think that's a great way to do it. Even a decaf coffee, you don't want the caffeine. I think that helps too, Right now I'm drinking hibiscus tea. which I love. I haven't eaten anything yet today. Plus, I was a little behind the mark today. I did these slides this morning, some of them. So I'm not, I find the hibiscus tea really helps me. Green tea, herbal teas, anything like that you can drink. I'm a tremendous believer in mineral water, because mineral water is high in the minerals, magnesium. I always say, a liter of Pellegrino mineral water has about 50 milligrams of magnesium in it. Let's see what else Rob says. I do some chores around the house. That's a great thing to do, Rob. Loading and washing the machine, dishwasher, No, I think that's great. Yes, keep yourself busy. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that was Rosie. Rosie says she does that. That's a great thing to do. Keep yourself busy. If you know you get hungry around 12, 1 o'clock, and you want to be able to go another hour or two, those are all great suggestions. Do something. Get up and move around. Don't just think about how hungry you are. I know it sounds kind of harsh, but you can do these things. Plan ahead. Let's see what S. Miller's got to say. Drinking snake oil juice. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, it's snake oil juice. It's interesting. I just started looking into him because I think people talked about it. He talked about, he's been on this thing of this like fruit and meat diet too. And people have been putting that to me because I did it like a couple of weeks ago. What happened? I lost, my slide shrunk there. Let's see if we can get this big again. Hope I can get it big. Let's see. There we go. I think, I'm not exactly sure. Maybe you would know, Miller, if exactly what's in there. I'm assuming there's some basic electrolytes, like no calorie electrolytes. Probably some like, I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming it's going to be like some probably potassium citrate, some magnesium citrate, a little bit of sodium. Oh, drinking some Pellegrino right now. That's great. Yeah, I love Pellegrino water. It's almost probably like doing like a snake juice, but it's just and it's naturally occurring, all the minerals, which is great. You get a little bit of sodium. I'm not a big believer in high sodium because I think a lot of people are sodium sensitive when it comes to blood pressure and things like that. But I like the potassium, like the magnesium, always too. And then taking it to the next level, right? This is like that Thomas the Law thing. I love his channel. He's the apple cider vinegar guy with fasting and fitness, obviously. A tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in like a Pellegrino mineral water, I love. It really suppresses my appetite. Plus, it helps control blood sugar. The acidic acid in apple cider vinegar helps control blood sugar. And you get the fermented food of the, fermented food's great for the gut, for, your probiotics and prebiotics in your stomach. The diversity of that bacteria is good for health and brain and all those amazing things. Everyone's really realizing the gut, good gut health just keeps the whole body healthy. Okay. I'm starting to, you're going to start it? Oh, let me know how you do. I had a hard time with it. I know we may have discussed it. I did it for like a week and I just couldn't stick to it. It just made me hungry, I have to say. The fruit, and I just missed the vegetables. But do it. I'm curious to know how you do. I don't think it's an unhealthy thing to do. I think it's a good thing to do if you can do it. Should be interesting. That's great. And another thing some people like to do, I do this from time to time, but for me, it's a little, me personally, I find it to be a little, I love eating pickles, because if once again it's fermented. And I did a post on pickles recently. It's interesting, like most pickles you get in the store, they're vinegar pickles. They're not fermented. They just like spice the pickles with vinegar, and they get like sodium and spices. You really, when you're buying pickles, when you're buying sauerkraut, you really want it to be like fermented the old-fashioned way, like the slow process of fermenting, so you get all the good, the probiotics and everything. So make sure when you're looking for pickles, it has to say naturally fermented on the bottle. And I mean, I've done it from time to time. To me, it's a little too too much sodium for me, drinking the straight pickle juice. But I know people love it and like it, and they think that it's a nice electrolyte type drink, and it controls the appetite. It's not one of my favorites. If I did it, I probably would I would dilute it with a little bit of water. I do something like that. Let's see what Gene said. Do you add a tablespoon of Metamucil to a protein shake? You could. It's interesting because so many of them now have fiber in it, like for example, if you can eat like a Quest protein bar, which I actually do like those bars. If you have no issues with dairy, it's a milk isolate and a whey protein isolate. It's like 21, 22 grams of protein, and they give you 14 grams of fiber. I think that's a good bar. You get 14 grams of fiber. But I think it's a fine thing to do, to add some fiber to the protein shake. But you can, I think you can, if you can go with the Metamucil, but you can just buy those husks, right? The inulin, stuff like that, and just sprinkle a little powder on it. You can throw a little ground flaxseed if you want to get a little bit more nutrition. But I think that's totally good, Gene. I think it's a good idea, definitely. Especially if you're eating such low calories, you want to make sure you're getting enough fiber in for the day. I think that's a good idea too. Let me know when I'll let you know when I would love to know when you start and how it goes, definitely. If you want to, you can you know, I have that Facebook group, my time restricted eating Facebook group, where I post my meals there sometimes. I always do them on Instagram. Post some of your meals there. I'd love to see them. It'd be fun. You can join. It's a free group, you know. Okay. Let's see. Snake juice is made up of sodium, salt, potassium, chloride. That makes sense too. Oh, a little baking soda. That's interesting for the baking soda. Wow. Magnesium sulfate. That's interesting in the salts. Interesting, the baking soda. It's funny, you know, there's a lot of research on baking soda for exercise performance. You know, it blunts the acid. It's interesting. Interesting. That's good. And maybe it gives you like a nice filling effect. Okay. And then there's another thing here. I think it's pretty much okay if you want to take in like a little monk fruit and some stevia in like a no calorie type beverage. I would stay away from the, you know, like the fake sweeteners, but a little monk fruit, a little stevia, it might give you a little spike in insulin possibly, but there's no calories there. So, you know, if it helps you drinking like a diet drink, like an iced tea, and you want to put like a little bit of monk fruit in, you can buy a package of the monk fruit. See how you respond to it. If you find that it doesn't make you hungry, I think it's totally fine to do it. But if you find that it even makes you more hungry, then I wouldn't do it. Because some people find if it spikes insulin, you get even hungrier later because there's no calories, you know, from that insulin spike. You have to experiment with that, but I think it's okay. I'm a little flexible with that. If you want to do a monk fruit or a stevia, I think it's totally fine. Okay. And okay, let's go to number, this is interesting. This is kind of my favorite one. I'm really into this. I did a video on it on the channel. I don't think the video did that well, but I'm really interested in it because I'm going to be starting my own supplement company. I've been doing a ton of research, and probably the first 3 supplements I'm going to come out with is, one is going to be an essential amino acid supplement like we're going to talk about. The second one, I think I'm going to come out with a collagen unflavored plain protein powder. You know, I just want to source it from the best possible place. That's what I've been working on. And then I'm going to come out with a nitric oxide enhancing supplement. See, nitric oxide is a molecule that's produced naturally in the body, but when levels are elevated, it dilates. It can open up blood vessels. It helps with blood flow, helps with exercise performance, can potentially help lower blood pressure. So my supplement is going to be based like natural sources like beetroots. I've talked about this before. Beets are high in nitrates, which get converted into nitric oxide naturally within the body, which, you know, helps with exercise performance, helps lower blood pressure. Red spinach extract's another one. Arugula is another one. Like, that's why I eat arugula every single day. You know, so I think those are going to be my first 3 supplements. An essential amino acid supplement, which we'll talk about now, collagen protein, and maybe a nitric oxide enhancer from natural sources. Let's see what Gene's got to say. I'm actually wondering which fiber supplement is the best. I would go with that. I like the husks. I have a whole container of it, and if I find that I don't get enough fiber one day, you can overdo it though. Just be careful with it. I'll sprinkle a little bit like on a Greek yogurt instead of doing flaxseed. I like ground flaxseed on yogurt, but you'll get much more with the husks. Inulin is good. They're all good. I think those two very similar to Metamucil. The only thing I don't like about Metamucil is I find that, well, if you get the plain unflavored, it's really the same thing, right? But sometimes Metamucil comes flavored, you know, with the sweeteners in it, and I don't really want that. But I think they're all good. But as long as you're getting the soluble and the insoluble, you're getting both, and that's a combination of both. That's why I like the ground flaxseed, because you get a combination of both too. You know, but I think they're both just good. They're probably cheaper too than buying Metamucil, because Metamucil will probably be a little bit more expensive as opposed to going to a health store and just grabbing those. Well, let's see. Take it easy. I'm listening to the. Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks for stopping in. I appreciate it. That's great. Oh, yeah. Also, guys, if you're enjoying this, give me a thumbs up if you don't mind. It seems like YouTube, the more thumbs up I get, YouTube will show it to more people. So maybe we'll get more people checking out my channel. Oh, that's right. Thanks again for the congratulations. A couple weeks ago, I finally got to 10,000 subscribers, so I really appreciate all the support and everyone watching my videos. It's really nice of you. I really like it. Angie, hey, how you doing, Angie? Thanks for stopping in. I appreciate it. Yeah, once again, really appreciate everyone helping me get to 10,000 subs, which is great. Okay, so let's talk about this other, like maybe hack or trick to help you with hunger when you're fasting. And like I talked about earlier, like the research is indicating that it might be a good idea to take in protein earlier in the day, but I personally I like skipping breakfast. So what I've been doing a lot, and I've been experimenting with this a lot, and I really do like it. I've been taking an essential amino acid supplement. Sometimes I just do branch chain. Like this is an example of a branch chain one, but I'll explain exactly what it is. You know, amino acids are the building blocks of protein. And you ever heard the term complete protein? Complete protein just means that they have all 9 of the essential amino acids. And here are all 9 of them. And the real important one when it comes to like growth signaling, mTOR, muscle building, is leucine. Leucine is probably the most important. That's the amino acid. Beside the amino acid itself, helping protein synthesis, helping you put on muscle, rebuild your body, tissue, you know, everything. Your body's all protein, right? It's, you know, it also signals like hormones and like growth signaling to build your body up. So leucine's a real important one. The other branch chain aminos are also isoleucine and valine. So sometimes when people, for years and years, people were just taking branch chain amino acids, and those are the 3. But it seems like the new research is indicating now that you're better off getting all 9 of the essential amino acids in a supplement. And the cool thing about essential amino acids, it's kind of like taking in protein without really getting calories. There are some calories, but not many. Like for example, if you took, say you took 7 grams of an essential amino acid supplement, which would be not that big of a scoop, but just a, okay, let me give you an example here. These are 4 pills, and they're, you know, they're decent size. It would be like maybe 5 or 6 of these pills, but in a scooper, it really wouldn't be that much. It's only going to be maybe 10, 15 calories, but you can almost look at it like the amount of leucine, the amount of isoleucine, the amount of, like the ratio of the amino acids will be, say, equivalent to maybe doing a scoop of, say, 30 grams of a whey protein isolate. But a whey protein isolate is going to be 100, 120 calories. It will give you a pretty good spike in insulin, so it will definitely break your fast. When it comes to the essential amino acid, it's going to slightly break your fast. But the idea of getting that extra protein maybe early in the day can really suppress your appetite. And it's probably good to have that protein in your system. So I've been fooling around with it. I really do like it. And you don't even have to necessarily take these essential amino acids when you're fasting. You can just take them within your eating window. I think it's a great thing to do. It also just it enhances the amino acid profile of any meal you're eating. Like for example, if you're eating like an incomplete protein type meal, say you're doing just a bunch of vegetables, right? Say you're having just a big salad for dinner that night. You're not that hungry. You want just a light salad, but you want to increase the amount of protein in your diet without increasing the amount of calories. An amino acid supplement, I think, an essential amino acid supplement, I think, is a great thing to do. So it's interesting. I think this is going to really be going forward in the next decade. It's going to be an extremely popular supplement. All the new science is showing all the amazing things these essential amino acids do. And I always like to prioritize protein. It's going to kind of lead into the next slide a little bit too, which is actually the 7th tip, which is really a whole bunch of tips. I also find that if you're hungry, you know, all the time from these intermittent fasting strategies, you're probably, unfortunately, not eating enough food in general during your eating window. Or you're probably low in some type of vitamin, some type of mineral, or some type of nutrients. And I would define nutrients as just vitamin, you know, protein, fats, carbs, all your macros, all your vitamins, all your minerals. If you're low in something, because maybe you're not eating, you know, a high quality, natural, whole food diet, and on top of that, you're fasting all the time, you're just going to be hungry because you're deficient. You know, it can really, that's why I said Sean Stevenson's book, I can't think of the name of his book. He really did a whole chapter talking about it, and I totally agree. Sometimes hunger is just an indication that you're just somewhat malnourished or just somewhat deficient in a particular vitamin, mineral, or nutrient. And I always like to talk about this, and I also love this, the protein leverage hypothesis. You know, I do agree. I do think that most people do not eat enough protein, especially when they're fasting, especially if you're doing OMAD, right? Especially if you're like doing a 24-hour fast twice a week. You want to make sure you're getting a good amount of protein in on the days you're eating. If you're doing 18-6 or 16-8, if you're eating 2 meals a day, you really got to make sure you're taking in enough protein. That's where the essential aminos can come in. You can still have your 8-ounce piece of chicken, fish, or meat, and then maybe take some extra essential aminos in addition to it. So when it comes to the protein leverage hypothesis, I really love this hypothesis. A couple of researchers came up with this formula saying that you will keep on eating food until you reach your protein requirement, whatever that might be. And it's kind of hard to determine. I think the rule is, like I said, 0.9 grams per pound of body weight. Let's say your protein requirement is 100, like Gina, 130 grams of protein a day. If you're not eating high, like protein dense type foods, you're going to be hungry, and your body's going to keep eating until you reach that requirement. So, for example, if most of your calories are coming from, say, even vegetables, say grains and pastas and things like that, you have to eat so many calories to reach your protein requirement. You're always going to be hungry, and then you'll wind up overeating. So, for example, if you're eating, like even like a food like a broccoli is on a percentage basis is high in protein, but you know how much broccoli you have to eat to get to like 150 grams? I mean, it's humanly impossible. You're eating a field of broccoli. If you're eating breads, even whole grain bread that maybe every 200 calories of whole grain bread has 5 grams of protein, you know how much bread you have to eat to get to 100 grams of protein, an insane amount. So keep that in mind. Prioritize protein is a great way to prevent hunger. Beside the fact that protein has the most satiety, because you get generally when you're taking in protein, you're getting in fats. So proteins and fats are the foods when you eat them stop you from being hungry. You feel really satisfied. You have a nice steak, right, with a little with some broccoli and some extra virgin olive oil on the broccoli. You're not going to be hungry for hours after that. So really try to prioritize protein. If you're trying to get protein from like low quality protein sources, you're going to be hungry. It's going to be hard for you to get enough protein. Okay. And another thing too, I like people to be reasonable with these fasting strategies. Don't restrict calories too aggressively, unless you're just doing it short term. Like if you want to do something really aggressive, like the alternate day diet, where you're eating alternate day fasting, where you're eating every other day, like you're doing a 36-hour fast every other day, I wouldn't do that for too long. Do it for a month the max. Take a diet break. You can even just do it once a week. I mean, be realistic. I mean, we're all trying to figure out like a long-term strategy or approach that we can do for the rest of our lives to maintain an optimal weight, to be healthy, to feel good. I like them things like, don't torture yourself. I mean, it's not good to be hungry all the time, right? I mean, you're not going to feel good. You're going to drive yourself insane if you're always hungry. It's good to take diet breaks. If you jump into like an aggressive fasting strategy and you're like miserable a month and you're starving all the time, take a diet break, regroup. Don't torture yourself. You know, you'd be surprised. 100 calorie a day deficit will do something, especially if you're eating whole natural foods, right? And like I said, a 14-hour fast is still a good strategy. Mix it up. I mean, there are ways to do this to get all the benefits without really being hungry. So this is the summarize. I would say switch over to a whole natural food diet. Eat relatively low carb for a couple of weeks. Get the trigger foods out of your diet. You know, start off easy with these fasting strategies. Start off with a 12, 14-hour fast. Work your way to 16, 18. You can experiment with OMAD or alternate day fasting as more of a short-term strategy. Mix it up. You know, if you get hungry, prepare for it. There's so many things you can do. You really can go through all these fasting ideas without like torturing yourself and not being hungry, for sure. All right, hey, so good. We hit probably an hour. So let's do a Q&A. Does anyone have any questions? I hope you find this stuff helpful. I mean, I really love doing these lives. I know for the people who show up every single week, it can be a little bit repetitive. If you want me to go into like different things, leave it. And sometimes I find though that when it seems like most people love to talk about the intermittent fasting on these lives, but if you want me to cover more things like fitness, working out, or just other things, you know, definitely leave a comment. Let me know. Were there any questions from anyone? Let's see. Let me look on the phone to see if anything came in on the phone. I know there's always like a 2-minute delay, so I want to make sure. And yeah, I know I thank you, but I really love hitting 10,000 subs. My next goal now for the channel is to get to 100,000. It took me a long time to get to 10,000 though, I must say. But people say, you know, like these consultants, when you talk to them, they generally say it's harder to get to 10,000 than it is to get to 100,000 subscribers. So I hope I get to 100,000. I'm getting about 20 subscribers a day, which is kind of fun. And I got a little distracted the last couple of weeks because I'm doing so much research on the supplement company. That's another thing I would love to know from everyone. is if I do this supplement company, what supplements would you be interested? Do you like the idea of the collagen protein? Say, I love collagen protein because out of all the proteins, I feel that's the one that most people don't get naturally from their diet. And you know, collagen protein is a type 1 and type 3 protein, collagen peptides, which are high in certain amino acids like lysine, proline, which are really good for your skin, hair, and nails. And your body is all pretty much a matrix of collagen. Good for your skin, good for your hair, good for your nails, good for your joints, good for your connective tissue. And I may have mentioned this before, like ancestrally when people ate from head to tail, when people were eating like the skin, you know, the bone, that's why I love sardines so much. When people were eating like the organ meats, and you were getting a lot, when people were like, would take a piece of chicken, like gnaw on the ends of the bones, and you chew on the cartilage, which turns into collagen, which is like the collagen, you were getting good amount of collagen in your diet. But nowadays you really don't. So I personally, I do 2 scoops of type 1 and type 3, which is the most prominent collagen supplement every single day. It's 20 grams of collagen. It's only 70 calories, dissolves instantly in like coffee, tea, or something like that. Sometimes I'll throw it in a pre-workout shake. So I really like that. So that's definitely, I think, going to be one of the supplements I definitely want to come up with my own version of it. Make sure it's incredibly clean. I'm going to test it for any type of impurities, things like that. Go over again the best fruits to eat, and should I avoid bananas at all costs? I don't know about the rosy. I wouldn't necessarily avoid bananas at all costs. Yes, they're a little bit more of a higher glycemic fruit, about 100 calories, the average size banana, but you do get about 400 milligrams of potassium. I think it's okay to have a banana. You know, bananas, they taste great, they're fun. I wouldn't start pounding bananas all day long. You know, I wouldn't be, you know, snacking on 2-3 bananas a day. I wouldn't be doing things like that. But 1 banana 2-3 times a week, I think is totally acceptable if you love bananas. I wouldn't, and you can, and also, you know, there's the glycemic load of a meal. You're probably better off having that banana with some other proteins and fats as well. I know that's what people love, to put some almond butter on a banana if you're doing a snack like that, or a little peanut butter on a banana. I think it's a totally acceptable thing to do. Okay, let's see what Gene's got. I read that when VC, okay, you have to absorb 1.5 grams of protein per pound of either body weight to preserve your muscles. Okay, very low calorie. That's what you mean. Okay. I read that when you're following these very low calorie diet, you have to absorb 1.5 grams of protein per pound of lean body weight to preserve muscle. You know, I wouldn't say that's necessarily like a concrete rule, but when you're eating low carb, let me make sure I'm getting this question right. Okay, when you're eating a very low carb diet, you have to absorb 1.5 grams of protein per pound of ideal body weight. You know, I think I do like that formula, like 1.5 grams of protein per pound of what your ideal weight might be. So say you're 275, you want to weigh 225. But that would be a lot of protein. That would be like almost, that would be like 300 grams of protein. I mean, there are doctors I like that, like Dr. Needleman, the PE diet. I love his diet. He would go that high. I don't think you have to go that high, Gene. I like more my formula, like maybe you can even go 1 gram. But for you, if your ideal, say you want to get down to 225, even 225 grams of protein, you could do that. It's a little bit on the high side to me. I mean, I think you do reach a point of diminishing returns with protein when you go that high. But I know bodybuilders do it. There are some people like it. I don't think you're going to hurt yourself in any way. Like, I wouldn't be concerned about kidneys or anything like that going 1 gram per pound of like what your ideal weight wants to be. I think you can, even 1.5, I don't think you're going to hurt yourself, and if you enjoy it, you can do it. I would experiment with it a little bit, but I don't think you have to go that high, 1.5. I think that's pretty on the high side. I know bodybuilders do it, and like football players and things like that. You could do it, but I think that's a little bit on the high. I think it's a little bit of overkill going that high. Hey, 𝘾𝙏𝙏, how you doing? My daughter had a baby. Oh, congratulations. That's incredible. That's a big baby. 10 pounds, 5 ounces. I haven't been able to stick with my intermittent fasting keto these last 3 weeks. I went to a house tending to, yeah, I understand totally. So you're helping out your daughter. That's amazing. I know I talked about, I had twins. I was in like survival mode. Everyone helped us out. So it's a wonderful thing to do. I can't wait one day. I know it's going to be way down the road for me. I can't wait to have grandkids. I cannot Cannot wait. I would absolutely love it. I know my parents would love it too. They'd be great grandparents, which would be incredible. Yeah. So congratulations, Jenny. I have to look. I'm gonna look up. I bet you posted some pictures on Facebook, on Instagram. I haven't seen them, but I'm gonna look. I bet maybe you have some baby pictures, or maybe I saw them. And sometimes people who follow me who I like you, Calorie. Sometimes I may just hit the like button and not really look. But I'm gonna look. Because I'm sure you have some pictures of the baby, which is nice. Let's see what Rosie's got. Also, I want to cheat and have some carbs. Is it better after meal as opposed to before meal? I would say yes. After the meal is better. And this is interesting, and I've talked about this briefly before too. Another book I loved is Why We Get Sick by Ben Bikman. He's the PhD. He's kind of like a PhD. He's a professor too who specializes in insulin and even weight loss. I've learned a lot from him, and he's in that whole that mindset that insulin's like the root cause of so many different diseases. And Why We Get Sick was a great book. It came out about a year ago, but he has a great Instagram page, and he posts great videos on all, and he quotes studies all the time. And he found this study when he talked about it in the book, and he even talked about it on some videos. I was a little surprised, to some degree. And what the study stated is that they had people eat a normal meal, and then they had a control group. Okay, let me get it exact. They had a control group where they ate a normal meal, and then before the meal, they had like a glass of orange juice and like a sugary type thing. And then they took another group that had them have a normal meal, like their protein, fat. Then they waited 45 minutes and had that group drink like an orange juice, like a carbohydrate type thing. And it turned out that the group who delayed their carbohydrates, like had that glass of juice, and it may even have been a piece of toast with the juice. I'm not getting it totally right, but the whole concept is they took in their carbohydrates 45 minutes after the meal, had a much less blood sugar glucose response to the meal, which is really interesting to me. So and he talks about it in his book and in a couple of videos he did. He talks about that if you are going to have carbohydrates, and we're not talking about like high fiber carbs, like it's okay to have your piece of fish and your vegetables or a salad, like just a normal, good, healthy, like high fiber type carb. But if you are going to have maybe a dessert, or if you are going to have maybe even this is what I do. Like, say I do want to carb up one particular. Say if I like having a sweet potato or something like that, you're better off doing it 45 minutes after the meal. Your body will process it better. Hard to explain why. Maybe just because you have all the other proteins and fats in your system, it blunts the blood sugar response. And this is very similar to people who take berberine. That's another supplement you can take before you eat, which helps control blood sugar. Or doing like an apple cider vinegar, say, before a meal. It helps control blood sugar post-meal. And that's what this study shows. It's kind of interesting. And I have done other videos of talking about how I don't think it's a good idea to take in like simple, high-processed type carbohydrates with fats at the same time, because it's creating an opportunity within the body. It makes it too easy to store away these fats, from the spike in insulin. Like, for example, the worst thing you can do is to take a simple carbohydrate, like a donut, which is like simple flour and sugar with bad processed oils. So just think, the donut, the sugar in the donut and the flour is going to spike insulin like crazy. And then you have unhealthy fats. So a high fat, high carb type meal, it'll make it easier for that meal to be stored away as body fat. So based on what Ben Bikman says, and from me reading that study and even my own experimentation, I do think it's better off to take in the carb, to eat that carb 45 minutes or so after your normal meal, if you could. So I hope that helped answer your question, Rosie. That's what Rob. I just finished legs, back workout. I'm about to break my fast. I think plan to make 3-egg omelet with avocado, and I think that's a great. I think that's a wonderful way to break your fast. I mean, you're getting the protein. 3 eggs, about 6-7 grams of protein. That's 21 grams of protein. That's probably on the high side. I think you can even take in a little bit more food if you want to, unless you're really watching calories. I think you can even go a little more protein, Rob, if you wanted to. I think you see, like I say, and you can do like that. That's a good example of an ideal meal where maybe you would want to also do an essential amino acid supplement. So you're getting like 21 grams of protein from the eggs. then if you took an amino acid supplement, which is only going to be 10 calories, it's like taking an additional 30 grams of protein in. And if you're looking to like watch calories, that's a great thing to do. You know, I think that's good. But I know Rob's a vegetarian, and these essential amino acids are plant-based, so it's good for a vegetarian diet to make sure they get all the complete proteins. But I think you can even eat a little bit more, Rob, you know, than just that, you know. Let's see what Gene's got here. Oh, you meant kilograms. That's 2.2. So 2.2. So you're talking more like 70, maybe 70. Okay, so let me back up. So 2.2 kilograms. So 2.2 kilograms per protein. So that's kind of like, I think that's probably a little on the low side, Gene, but in the ballpark. In the ballpark, I think it's a little bit low. So it's 2.2. So let's say your goal weight is 225 pounds. Protein, that puts you about 100 in the low 100s. I think I would go a little more than that. I mean, it's not out of the ballpark. And obviously, Gene, you know, it's going to be hard to go with it, give you exact numbers. I do like the simplest way to do it. Well, you maybe, you know, I'm not great with kilograms. I think you really can go 1 gram per pound of whatever your ideal weight is, like lean weight. Like, let's say your goal is to get down to 225 with a 20% body fat level. What's that? So you want to take in, you know, in the high 100s in protein, something like that. But if I think even 130, that 130 grams you talked about earlier, that's going to get you at it like, that probably is the 2.2 kilogram formula. Maybe a little low, but I think that's still pretty good, 130 grams. Depending on how active you are too. Okay, let's put man, okay. I mixed up my fasting each week and switched it up. I have rest days too, so it makes a weekly schedule for myself. I made it a way of life, as I always was snacking between fasting really helps me. Oh, that sounds great, man. That's good. Sounds like you got a good plan. I know we all got to figure out what works best for you. Like we say, you know, I always go back to my spiel about like the 3 ways in which you control your weight. You know, one way is food quality for sure. You know, anyone would say if you're eating all processed junk food, even if you're fasting, even if you're like, you know, doing a 24-hour fast once or twice a week, if you're eating junk food when you do eat, you're gonna have a hard time. So food quality, always important. Whole natural food diet, relatively low in carbohydrates, is so important, hormonally and for calories, right? Number 2, calories. The amount of calories count. You know, it's not good to be in a calorie deficit for like an indefinite period of time because it's just slowing your metabolism down and metabolic adaptation, but calories do count, right? And then the 3rd way, I think, is food timing. You know, like it's nice to go through periods when you're in a fasted state and a fed state. So you have to pull. Peter Attia talks about this, the guy, you know, that Harvard doctor I always follow. He's got a great podcast called The Drive. He says you got to pull on these levers. You got to pull on food quality, right? You got to pull on the amount of calories you eat, and then you got to pull on when you eat, and use a combination of all 3 of those things to maintain an optimal diet and to maintain an optimal weight. You know, Krill is here. Thanks, Krill. Thanks for showing up. I appreciate it. Don't know about weight management though. Yeah, I know, right? And Krill, I still didn't. I know Krill wanted me to do a video. I have to do a video on that too. On I think Krill wants to put some muscle on, and he knows what he's doing though. I know he's a real fit guy. I've seen pictures of him. I think he's a great musician too. And he wanted to do like kind of like a bulking video, and I like to do something like that too. I mean, I'll talk about it how I basically would just do it with clean food. And if some people say dirty bulk and clean bulk, that's kind of like a bodybuilding term. Like some guys and gals, when they want to bulk up, will literally just eat anything they want and just try to put on some muscle, and they don't care if they put on some body fat. But obviously I lean more to those clean type of bulks where you're literally just slightly increasing your calories. You want to be in a positive energy balance. You know, maybe just increase calories, 200-300 additional calories. Maybe just sneak in 1 more meal or 1 more protein shake a day, and, you know, train hard. You know, look at it like on maybe like take a 12-week sequence. Say, you know, at the end of 12 weeks, I want to be this much stronger. I want to be 4 or 5 pounds heavier. So slightly go into a positive energy balance with maybe a protein shake or a good clean meal, and then hit the gym kind of hard. Not every workout, right? You really get bigger when, like, you know, you get bigger when you're resting. Progressive resistance, just gradually make the workout harder and harder to the point where at the end of a 12-week cycle, maybe the last month, you're really going for it. But even in that, in the beginning, you want to gradually increase the intensity. But we'll talk about it more. It'll be a fun video to do too. All right. Any other questions? It's interesting. My daughter is I think at 12:30. I got a little bit more time now. She's going to interview me at 12:30. She's been interviewing everyone in my family and her friends for a college project, which is kind of fun. So I'm going to have my life story interviewed, for my daughter. But she's a really great interviewer. She's has her own radio show at school and everything, which is all great. All right, guys. Any other questions? We still got a whole bunch of people in the room, so I don't want to go until I don't want to leave any questions out. Let's see what we got. Let's see if anything came in on the phone. Anything else about fitness, health, weight loss we want to discuss? And thanks, Krill, too. I don't know if you were here earlier. I know Krill left me a bunch of nice messages for me hitting 10,000 subs, which is really nice, too. All right, so I'm going to hit the road. This was great. Really enjoyed it. Also, leave some comments. I'm curious to know if you like those community posts I've been doing almost every single day where I pick foods and give you my opinion on some healthy, like, superfoods to eat. Also, give me more ideas for videos you'd like me to make and anything else. Well, I appreciate the support. I appreciate you showing up every other Sunday. So I think the two Sundays from now, I think I'm actually going to be away at a track meet for my son. I forget where it is, but I'm going to do it anyway. If I have to do it from the hotel room, or maybe I will be here this week. I forget what it is, or maybe the week after is when we're going away. I'm not sure, but I'll be here 2 weeks from today, Sunday. And once again, I really appreciate everyone stopping in and supporting my channel and all the videos. Take care, everyone. Keep the fasting going. Keep the good eating going. Get outside, take a walk. We're going into spring now. Good weather. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.